Hello and welcome to the International Daily Roundup by People's Dispatch, where we bring you major news developments from around the world. Our headlines: movements globally mark Day of Solidarity with Palestine, farmers' protest in India intensifies, Thai protesters continue pressure on military junta, and we take a look at the agony of Saudi activist Loujain al-Hathloul. In our first story, movements in progressive sections across the globe celebrated and marked the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with Palestine on November 29th. The United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres issued a statement asking the world to renew the commitment to the Palestinian people in their quest to achieve and build a future of peace, dignity, justice, and security. This year, the UN Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People is set to organize a meeting on December 1st at New York and launch a virtual exhibition on the apartheid wall built across the occupied territories by Israel. The occasion marks the commemoration of the UN General Assembly resolution known as 181-2 of 1947, which is also known as the Partition Plan. The celebration of marking on November 29th as the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people began in 1977 at the call of the General Assembly. On the occasion, the International Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Movement issued a statement reminding the UN that solidarity without action does not mean much and asked it to investigate Israeli apartheid in the occupied territories. Samidun, the Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Campaign, launched an All for Palestine campaign in solidarity with Palestinians' rights to self-determination and their right to return. It asked its participants to issue solidarity messages and raise Palestinian flags. The campaign also proposes a Madrid conference for Palestine in September 2021. In our next story, following the joint nationwide strike by workers and farmers last week, India's capital New Delhi is witnessing an intense standoff between the government and the farmers. Since November 26, thousands of farmers' groups have marched on Delhi from across the country in protest against three controversial farm bills recently passed by the right-wing government of Narendra Modi. Farmers' groups have responded to the call of an indefinite protest in the capital under the banner of the Samyukta Kisan Morcha or the United Farmers Front. They have said that they will continue the protest until the farm bills are repealed. The three bills will seek to do away with the existing regulation on base prices for agriculture goods, government-mediated produce markets, and will enable greater corporate entry into agriculture. Despite barricades, digging up of national highways and police repression at the Delhi state border, hundreds of farmers have stormed through the last week. In the meanwhile, hundreds more have laid siege to major transport routes on two major entry points connecting Delhi with the rest of the country. The intensification of the protests has seen the government reach out to some farmers' leaders and propose talks. Farmers have nonetheless rejected the government's conditions for negotiations and have demanded that all sections be consulted. In our next story, we go to Thailand, where anti-government protesters are up the ante after a march and demonstration was held outside the barracks of a Royal Guard regiment on Sunday. The demonstration was held outside the garrison of the 11th Infantry Regiment, one of the two Royal Guard units directly under the command of the King. Over 1,000 people who marched to the gates of the garrison occupied a road that leads to the base. The demonstration is the latest attempt to pressure the royalty and is also seen as a message to the military-supported government of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. The march was held 2 days after concerns of another coup prompted coup prevention rallies and demonstrations at major intersections across the national capital Bangkok. The 11th Infantry Regiment, along with the 1st Infantry Regiment, was transferred under the Royal Security Command, which is directly under the monarch in October 2019 by the Chan-o-cha government. The regiment has a particularly grim history of being a leading elite force employed by successive governments against the communist-led rebellion between 65 and 83, and also in suppressing democratic protests against some of the more recent military coups. Protesters at the demonstration on Sunday presented a list of demands, which stated that it was unnecessary for the king to command a regiment. They also argued that transferring army units under the crown not only severely undermines democracy but also destabilizes the righteousness of the royal institution. And finally, on November 25th, the case of Saudi activist Loujain al-Hathloul was transferred to a court which hears terrorism-related offences. Loujain has been in prison for over 900 days and has suffered physical and psychological torture. We bring you this feature on the brutal treatment she has suffered at the hands of Saudi authorities.
31-year-old Saudi activist Loujain al-Hathloul has been in jail for over 900 days. On November 25th, her case was transferred to a terror court. Loujain was arrested in May 2018. She had actively campaigned for the right of Saudi women to drive and against the country's repressive guardianship laws. In 2018 June, a month after she was arrested, women were finally given the permission to drive. Yet, Loujain and many other activists remain in jail. Loujain has been brutally tortured in prison. She informed her family that she was beaten, waterboarded, subject to electric shocks, and kept in solitary confinement. She was also subjected to sexual harassment and threatened with murder and rape. Loujain has gone on hunger strike twice this year after she was not allowed to meet her family. In November, 2 weeks into her hunger strike, psychological torture was employed by the Saudi authorities, forcing her to give up the protest. On November 25th, she appeared before a court for the first time since March last year. According to her sister Lina al-Hathloul, Loujain looked extremely frail during her appearance in court and her body was shaking uncontrollably. Her voice was very soft and shaky. Her case was transferred to court hearing terror cases as the criminal court supposedly did not have the jurisdiction. The decision was widely condemned by human rights groups across the world. The full details of charges against Loujain and other activists are yet to be cleared. According to various media reports, she and 12 other activists are accused of conspiring with foreign organizations hostile to Saudi Arabia. Other charges include communicating with foreign journalists, attempting to apply for a job at the United Nations, and attending a digital privacy training. On November 25th, 3 of her fellow activists, Nasima Al-Sada, Samar Badawi, and Nof Abdulaziz, also appeared before the court, while another activist, Maya Al-Zahrani, remains behind bars. Just days ago, the virtual G20 summit was chaired by Saudi Arabia, and one of its themes was women's empowerment.
That's all we have time for today. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from around the world. Until then, keep watching People's Dispatch.
Que cantar, que vamos a triunfar, avanza ya.